Hi folks, welcome to 8-Bit Retro Journal. This video is for Amiga, which celebrates all things Amiga in the month of May. Back in early April, it was actually for an April 1st video, I did a video on the task scheduler on the Amiga. It was actually for a real task. I was trying to use it in a classroom to teach students about priority scheduling. And it didn't quite work the way I wanted it to work. And then sort of my solution, and this was why it was an April 1st video, was that I created the workbench environment, and it's actually running in the QL. Again, if you want to see that video and you haven't seen it yet, here's a link. I got a lot of feedback, especially from Amiga users who were saying, because I sort of implied that, hey, I think the exec kernel is flawed or broken, and they said, no, it's working exactly the way it's supposed to. And that the Amiga actually does what's called real-time priorities. And with real-time priorities, if a job has a higher priority, regardless of what the difference is, it gets access to the CPU until it decides not to. And so even if there's just a difference of 1 in priority, there's no ratio where it gives a bit more to, it gives maybe twice as much to one versus the other. That's really up to the process, because again, the idea of real time is it needs to run in real time. And they said that's how the exec kernel works. And yeah, okay, I accept that. And I've been reading more about real time priorities, and sometimes they're called non-preemptive priorities, because a job could literally not give back the task unless it cooperates, which is actually what cooperative multitasking is all about, where the kernel has literally no control. But again, there's a subtle difference, because the exec kernel can, if a process, unless a process completely takes over the machine and freezes, a process that has same priorities will act just like in a preemptive kernel. And so yes, that's how the Amiga kernel seems to work. Now, I also did a little bit of digging in terms of what real-time priorities are versus normal priorities, and here's a blogs.oracle.com about process priorities in Linux, and it actually states here that before looking at task priorities, I will briefly describe a different scheduling classes policy supported in the Linux kernel. A scheduling class or policy determines how the next task to run on the CPU selected. It also determines for how long the selected task gets the CPU if the task does not block or voluntarily go to the CPU. The Linux scheduler works for both real-time and non-real-time tasks. Real-time tasks, i.e. real-time priorities, need to respond to an event under a specific time frame, in most cases as soon as possible. So it does say that real-time, so tasks with real-time tasks intimating real-time priorities ought to respond quickly, and that was not happening in task scheduler. Further, the way the Linux kernel does its tasks is it has 100 priority values, 0 being the highest, 99 being the lowest. This is at the kernel level, and then it has an additional 40 between 100 and 139, and that's where nice comes in. So most normal tasks start off at 0 nice value, which means it's 120 priority, and then you can either be less nice by doing a -20, getting closer to that lower value, or more nice, being 19. And so that's how nice works, and that's going to become important when I go. Again, this is not a QL video, this is not a Linux video. We'll be doing the exec kernel in a second. I just wanted to cover that. And so this is, these normal priorities is kind of where I live in the QL world with regard to, doesn't use nice, but it just uses a range of 0 to 255, a bigger range. And the other thing I don't know, and that maybe someone can help, is interrupts also exist in an operating system. How do they differ from a real-time task that needs 100% of the CPU? Is it just implemented differently? Do you use real-time priorities for interrupts? The reason I ask that is because a lot of times disk I/O is not, if you watch, again, the QL doesn't expose real-time priorities, but it does sort of, if I do the following. I have don't be able to see this, but I'm going to stick this into the micro drive on the QL, the first one. You can hear it. Oops. Oh, get in there. And if I do a DIR, oops. mdv1 and hit return, you'll watch the, so let's wait till we can see the lines also. So the lines are right now, it's gray. It turns white. So you can see everything moving. Now if I do dir, you'll see everything stops. So that's sort of the system interrupting the processes. So that's probably an interrupt, not necessarily real-time priorities, but again, this is where the scheduler kind of does both. Oh, it's not done yet. Yeah. So it actually sat there and waited. So it's still, the thing is paused because even though you don't hear the drive going, it's sort of in the pause mode here saying, hey, because it wasn't showing the full screen, and it paused all the tasks. So the directory command actually takes over, and if you look at it, the jobs, okay, so let's give a different SP job, and let's do 0, oops, period, comma 0, comma, let's give it 32. It's not a bad priority. Okay, now let me do dir again. mdv1. This time it's going to have some of it buffered. But even with a low priority, it obviously stops all the processes. So in that sense, the main QDOS task is literally freezing the other tasks. So in that sense, it's kind of real-time priority, right? Because it's holding, because I have to hit space to show all of them. And you can see when it's listing them, and then it's finally listing them again. So in that sense, it kind of works a little bit like that, because I/O, and this actually happens on modern computers too. If you have sort of a network issue, sometimes your whole computer freezes up. You'll see this using a browser. And so that's interesting. That it does that. So again, is that interrupts or is that priorities? So going back to this, this is also the confusing part here. If you go dig a little deeper into this document, again, I'll put this document URL in a link in either the description or in the comment. But then it talks about that I guess the way priorities are presented to the user, priority IDs are that they go from 0 to 99, and then your static priorities from 0 to 139, meaning that if you give a 99 system priority, that actually is a 0 real-time priority. So they talk about how they map. So a higher priority is actually means a lower real-time priority. Yeah, this was confusing. So if you're a Linux person, they were just talking about how 0 through 99 maps to 99 to 0 at the kernel level. In any case, it's this yeah. So this is. I'm sorry. This is the actual priority, and this is what they call the real-time priority. And so, yeah, it was confusing because, this is kind of how they say the kernel operates, where 0 is the highest priority and the largest number, 139, is the lowest priority. But then they go into this real-time priorities at 99 mapped to a kernel priority of 0. So, yeah, I don't know why they do that. Like I said, I haven't played much with priorities. Now, I did try it on my Windows machine as well. In Windows, the task manager gives you 6 priorities. It gives you normal, above normal, high, below normal, low, and then a real time. And you try to apply real time to something. I was assuming if I tried to put real time on Notepad, the whole system would freeze until I quit Notepad, but it won't even let me do that. And if I put a real time priority, a high priority on any other task like Notepad, and then I run a browser in the background, there's no difference. And again, it's a multi-core, 8-core machine, my iMac, and if you have multi-processor, so I don't even know how real-time priorities work on a system that has multiple processors. So it's not as easy to test these things on modern machines, especially if they're multi-user as well. I will dig deeper into Linux in the future, but wanted to talk today about the executive suite, which is kind of cool. So let's do that. Okay, I got it set up. I always like to show the computer a little bit, so it's kind of here in the frame, and I can type on it. But at least you can see the screen, and I can use my mouse. I've already got Executive installed on here, but I'm just going to quickly show it's right here. And I'm going to quickly show you how to install it. I put all my new stuff on expansion, and you can see it comes as a folder, and it has this is just part of the install package, and you have to kind of go and say show all. And unfortunately, the way it comes, it just gives you an install. You need the latest installer, which I think is 43 or 4.3. I forget what it is. And if you click on it, it doesn't work. Right? It's like, oh, I don't know what it is. And if you then go under, if I go under my workbench and go and I have to show everything here as well, and go under C. I do have both install and the installer, which again is the latest, is the one that they say to use for everything. And I went too far, scroll too far. There it goes. So I have, so there's the install and installer. If I had to click on that, and then I give it, so it would be DH0 expansion executive v 2.10 install. That's the path name. If I click OK, it'll start up. Yeah, 43.3 is the installer. And the yeah, and if I say proceed, it'll start uncompressing things, and then it's just going to say can't, won't work. And then you just have to quit out of it. That's okay though. I've become more wiser with regard to how to use I can, let's just stop showing all, only icons. There we go. So what I had to do is inside of, so I can probably hide Executive V2, but again, the install script's here, and so what I needed to do is in my, again, I'm using Z shell instead of shell because I like it nicer. So you just have to go with CD, I'm already there, but I'll do it again, DH0 expansion executive, wherever I have it stored, V210, and here you have install, and then you would just do DH0 C installer install and hit return, and then it works. So the install just needs to be there. So anyway, I installed it, and what that gives you is it actually creates an executive folder which has all these cool things in here. This is the executive that runs. If you double click it, it'll actually say the server's running. Do you want to quit it? And you can quit it, and I will at one point. Then it has all these commands that you can use that are Unix-like, and it has this commander one that's just an interactive one. Here, this lets you do all sorts of cool things like set priorities directly. You just select, and then you can set priorities, or you can set nice values. You know, before I did my April 1st video, I played with this and did priorities. And that's when I crashed the system. So now, having read the document from Oracle that talks about understanding priorities on Linux, and this is trying to be kind of like a Linux Unix priority system. I'm not going to setting priorities here is dangerous because since they're real-time priorities, again, I'm assuming you can crash the system. So I'm not going to use this. It's a nice command you want to use, and that actually will work. And let me show you. So again, I'll leave this. We'll come back to this at one point. What I want to do next is, start those two favorite applications that I'm sure you're like, oh no, he's running. There it goes. I'm going to run this, and you'll see that, oh yeah, so you can see that it runs, and and then stops, runs, and then runs, and this runs. And that's the executive kernel doing its job. So you now have PS commands here. And you can see that, yeah, and these priorities are all over the place. And what it's doing, I think, is the exec kernel, look, it has 126 priorities. So almost the highest it can have was one more, 127. And I think it's definitely toggling these priorities. And you can see 60. So at one point, lines, now basic is higher than lines. And now lines is higher than basic. So it's toggling these priorities. These are the, and again, if you do a PS, and you can see, these are the, I forget which one. I think these are the actual priority. Yeah, these are the actual priorities, and these are the priorities that it, so these are the original priorities, and these are its priorities and a nice value. And so you'll see if you do the PS value that, yeah, lines and have 0, but then it's changing them to -67. So it's toggling these with 0 nice value. And watch if I do this. If I maximize this, bring it to the front, and open executive up, and it's a little slow because I'm running, and if I do this and I say, yeah, quit, go ahead and quit. Let's close that. Let's shrink that. Notice now there's no more pausing. They just run like it did before. They both now have so PS doesn't work anymore. And if you show T, they both now have 0 priorities like they had before. So now we're back in the world of again. So there's no pause here. But if I start if I maximize this, bring it to the front, open executive, and start the executive task. I think I started it. You can see now it's back to running in spurts. So it's running boop, stop, boop, boop. So it's no longer as interlaced as it was before. And again, if you watched my hack on the Mac kernel video, and you can see it right there, at about the 10-minute mark, 10.5 minute mark, you'll see that I'm running what's it called, Connect 4, 2 versions of it under MS-DOS, and you can see that that's exactly how they run. They run in spurts and not as granular as I showed you in the QL. So that's just a side effect on how the executive suite sort of modifies the kernel. So I think what's going on here is that the executive, and I'm going to use show T here because it organizes it better, that executive is running at high priority. So it basically is augmenting the kernel, checking all these priorities, and then modifying these task priorities on the fly to say, okay, you take over now, and it'll task this one out, and then you take over, and it'll switch them, and that's why these are changing. And so that's actually pretty cool. So that's kudos to the exec kernel for allowing to do that, because then you don't need to do the kind of hack I had to do on the Mac kernel where I had to trap a system call and modify it that way. Here you can just give yourself one of the highest priorities, and then check out what the priorities of the other jobs are and just change them yourself. It's almost like a user sitting there making those changes quickly, and I think that's cool. Now let me show you how the nice values work. So you can do basically renice. So again, if I do again using PS, the third column is going to be, and I'll try to, so it's priorities, the actual priorities that aren't being used currently, and the nice values. So if I go and say renice, so I have 202 and 203 are my two. So if I renice 20 202 and then renice -19 203, you'll see that this one runs crazy now and this one stopped. It might, I don't know if it'll run at all, but you basically maxed out the nice priority values and the executive now is freezing one and running the other, which I think is a nice job control. And then you could, and so the way to flip it around is these are values that you're adding to the nice. So I'm not setting nice to 20. I'm adding 20 to 0. And so if I want to flip these around, I actually have to do this. Renice minus 39,202, and then renice 40 203. And now you can see, did I do it right? Yeah, you can see the basics running like crazy now. And the lines has kind of stopped. And if I do a PS, you can see these have been flipped around. And now basic is running and lines is kind of settled to almost not doing anything. And again, that's the kind of job control I wanted. And the exec kernel doesn't give it to me, but the executive suite does. And I kind of like how it does that, because it allows you to, yeah. And again, if we open this up, so let's open this up again. There's more stuff that it gives you. If you go under executive, you have, this commander again, and that's also a way you can, set these things. It just gives you a visual, and it's running a little slow now because I've maxed out one of the priorities for either lines or Amiga Basic, but we can also sort of so Amiga Basic right now we can set the nice value to. So this is a nice interface, so I can set the nice value to 0 to get back the full control of it. And then for lines, I can set its nice value back. Again, it lets you set priorities. It's very dangerous. If you set priorities, the problem is that's the easiest way to freeze up your machine, just like I did in my April 1st video, because you're setting real-time priorities. Again, I'm still a novice to understand what real-time priorities are as much as I've read about it. But if that's what the exec kernel is doing, yeah, then you're just creating a rank of who has priority over others, and they may not give up the job. They may not, and then you might be done for. Some of these, so you have the top command. I think the load is actually a graphical thing that, yeah, gives you a load, which is nice. So it's always nice to have that. And these are the commands you type on the command line. I think this isn't going to work. Yeah, so this is, it just opens a shell and then runs top. Okay. But you can then also run that from the shell. I'm going to just bring this to the foreground really quick, and just so you can do top here as well. And I assume it's going to be smart enough to, it just opens it. Okay. Yeah. So that's nice. It shows you what the priorities are. Again, here you can see that it's just flipping these priorities one to the other, and that's why you get that different behavior. And again, these are its priorities, not the real priorities, which it calls our prize, the original priorities of the Amiga kernel. So yeah, I think that's how the executive does it. It takes up some memory. I think that's the unfortunate. So if you look at memory usage right now, you have about 3,900. This is a 1 megabyte system. If I click this, so 38.9 and quit it, it's giving you less. Oh yeah, so you lose about 39. Yeah, you lose about 40K, I think. And if you look at it, that kind of works out with what the size of this is. If you go information, it's about 38K in size. So it's not huge. I mean, if you only have 1 megabyte of memory, that might be problematic. But, if you're going to use the real multitasking of a system, I mean, again, the QL only has 128K and it does well. But it does well, and it just depends on what you want to run. So, yeah, I like the executive suite, and it's kind of a neat hack. It reminds me of my CPU, my Macintosh kernel hack of the 90s. It was called CPU Doubler. But I like it. I think it's kind of cool. Like I said, it's still haven't quite seen the granularity that I'd like to see. So this is still a little bit, But maybe if you adjust the nice values, you can have them run a bit more in sync. But definitely now I can slow one down and speed one up. So again, the executive suite, if you're into multitasking, kind of I won't say fixes, because I think that'll upset some Amiga folks, because I get that you believe that, hey, the kernel, that's the way it should have been run. Again, the advantage of just doing real-time priorities is, or the way they're doing priorities, is that you can have this thing like executive to give it a high priority. On the QL, since all priorities are relative, you could write you could do real-time priorities if you automated that, because what it could do is set everyone to 0 and then give it its highest priority to run, and then when it's done, reset the original priorities, kind of what the executive does. So you could do that. It's just that you have to sort of implement this idea of real-time priorities by forcing you to go and set everybody to 0 and then set them back. So you could have sort of an executive on the QL as well. But again, I don't know if you need that or not. And like I said, there are the idea of interrupts, which I'm not as familiar with yet in terms of how does interrupts compare to a real-time task. So anyway, this video is getting a bit long, so I'm going to end here. I hope you enjoyed sort of this run through the just multitasking in general, and then the Amiga and then the executive suite that improves it. Love to hear your feedback, so let me know what you think, and watch out for some more Amiga videos. All right, so thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you soon.